It's election night in California. Welcome to the Sacramento Bee newsroom. I'm your host, Brian Anderson. Today we're going to be breaking down the presidential primary results as well as some key local races. Sitting here and standing here right now to join me, Sacramento Mayor, Mr. Darrell Steinberg. Thanks for coming on the show.
Great to be with you. Thank you for having me.
So I want to talk about your endorsement for Joe Biden. Why do you support him?
Well, I support Joe Biden because I believe this country needs a different kind of change. It needs a return to civility, a return to normalcy, a return to respect for our democratic institutions. I think it's easy to forget just how far away we have gotten from the norms of how we treat one another and how our political system, imperfect as it is, can work over the last 3+ years with Donald Trump.
So why do you think someone like him, who's a more moderate candidate, can resonate with a liberal state like California?
Well, we'll see tonight. And we know that Senator Sanders has some significant organizational advantages. And look, what I say about Senator Sanders, and even though he's not my preferred candidate, I think for those of us who do progressive policy within the so-called establishment, that we have a responsibility to listen to what he has to say and what he's saying and why so many people, especially young people, are resonating to his message. I think we would be mistaken to ignore that. But I believe Joe Biden presents the best chance to beat Donald Trump. And I also think the country needs 4 years of calm, stability, return to normalcy, combined with his great track record of fighting for working people and getting progressive things done.
So that's the case for Biden, but I got to push back on a couple of things. I know you were personally split on this decision. It took you a while to make this call, and you were considering Mike Bloomberg very heavily.
Well, remember,
what tipped the scale?
Well, remember, I first endorsed Kamala Harris, our home state senator, and of course, I think she would have made a fine president. I'm loyal to her. But when she dropped out, I thought about it for a while, and I respect Mike Bloomberg a lot. I think he adds some real substance to the race. But I did talk to both of them, and I concluded that Joe Biden is who we need now, because I think we need a different kind of change. Somebody who presents himself with some empathy and who can kind of comfort the country that is really divided, and frankly, getting used to, again, a norm that I don't think we want to be a long-term or certainly permanent part of our country's culture. Trump has done more damage than we maybe acknowledge. And that's not actually a partisan statement, because I believe in the two-party system. I believe that both parties have their right and different approaches. And I think we're best when we fight for our values, but we find a way to work together. Trump defies all of the norms.
Well, I want to get you...
And it's the way he acts, the way he treats people.
I want to get you to talk about Sanders, because that's obviously a big focus here tonight.
He's going to do very well in California.
Do you think he'll win?
I do, but the question, here are the key questions to watch tonight, is that magic 15%. First of all, will Joe Biden exceed the 15% threshold? I believe he will.
And for our viewers, that means 15% statewide or at a congressional level. To get a pledged delegate, and the state has 415.
Exactly. Thank you. The question is, will he break 15%? I believe he will. The other question, so the second question is, how close will he come to Bernie Sanders, even if Senator Sanders wins? Third question, will Mike Bloomberg or Senator Warren break the 15% threshold? Because if they do, it makes it more difficult for Vice President Biden then to come closer to Bernie Sanders when it comes to delegates. So these are the key questions in California. We think Sanders will win. By how much over Biden? Will Biden break 15%? Yes. How close will he get to Sanders? And then will Warren and or Bloomberg break the 15%? If they don't, better night for Biden. If they do, probably a better night for Sanders.
And you're running for re-election tonight. And
there's that!
And we want to talk about local races, so let's bring in my colleague Teresa Clift here. Teresa, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts quickly. What do you think are the races to watch, and what questions do you have for the mayor here?
Yeah, there's a few interesting local races tonight, aside from the mayor's race, which we believe he's going to win.
Do you believe you're going to win?
I do, I hope, but I never take it for granted, so we will see.
There's also a few other races that are we think will be a little more close, and we might not even know them tonight. We might not know them until tomorrow or later this week. And one of those is the Measure G race, which is a ballot measure for youth services. It would require the city to put about 2.5% of its general fund toward youth programs and services on top of the money it already does. And the mayor has presented a counter proposal to that, which will be on the November ballot. He had some concerns about when the city is in a tough financial spot in a couple of years with rising pension payments. So Measure G tonight, whether or not that passes, the mayor's version will be on the November ballot. So that's probably going to be a close one tonight. Measure G, that's a citywide vote. And then there's also going to be the District 8 race, which is down in Meadowview, Parkway, that area.
In City Council.
In City Council, yes, thank you. So Councilman Larry Carr's held that seat. And now he's retiring, and there's going to be a number of candidates. There's going to be Pastor Les Simmons, who is a big advocate on behalf of peaceful actions for Black and brown people, specifically after the unarmed police shootings of Stephon Clark. He has been big in that community and helping with youth in the Meadowview area to have opportunities. He recently renovated the Cal Skate facility to give youth a place to go down there for mentorship and skating and fun and job training.
With city Measure U resources.
That's right. That's right.
So I gotta ask, what
No, I didn't mean to interrupt.
What are your thoughts
on
on Measure G? What do you think's going to happen?
Well, I reluctantly oppose G, as Teresa said, and do have an alternative. I think it's going to be close. And I also think one thing tonight, in terms of expectations that we were talking about earlier, I'm not sure we will know the results of any close elections tonight, both statewide and here in Sacramento, because of Election Day is no longer Election Day. We have election 10 days prior to the election, of course, vote by mail, and a lot of people who are voting today by mail, their ballots aren't going to necessarily be counted tonight. And so I think we may have a tentative idea of where some of these races are going. But on the closer ones, I don't think we will know for days or even potentially weeks. And that's something we have to sort of change our mindset as voters now, because we all expect election night we're going to get the result. That isn't necessarily
not in
the
California.
case.
People should have learned their lesson
Well,
from that.
I still think we think and have that expectation that, we're going to know. We may not know.
So Teresa, what's the big questions you have for the mayor?
So on Measure G last week, Mayor, you got the votes to put your alternative proposal on the ballot for November.
Correct.
And one of the reasons you mentioned that you wanted an alternative proposal was city staff have estimated that the city could be facing a deficit roughly $21 million in the fiscal year that starts July 1st, 2021.
Right.
Do you think that the vote to put your version on the November ballot might impact how voters vote tonight on the version that would be more money for you?
Well, I was very transparent about it. I did say that I wanted to have the council consider the alternative before this March election, because I wanted voters to know that there was an alternative. Look, the difference is tonight's measure, however it goes, takes 2.5%, as you said, right off the city budget. So even if we go into deficit, what I worry about is not so much the pension issue. I worry that we're not going to have the capacity to follow through on the promises I made in the Measure U campaign, namely to create a $100 million affordable housing trust fund, a capital fund for revitalizing our sometimes forgotten commercial neighborhood corridors, to invest in small businesses in the neighborhoods, and to do a whole lot more to uplift our disadvantaged neighborhoods in Sacramento. And so my alternative would take 20%, not off the top of the budget, but off of any new revenue when revenue is increasing. So I think it's a better way to do it, but it's kind of it's a fascinating political science study, if you will, here about how this may work, because whether G passes or fails tonight, we're still going ahead. If it passes, then my measure would override it, but if G fails, I have a robust measure that will go on the November ballot that would create a separate permanent fund for youth. And so either way, I do think that the youth of our community will win, And the proponents of G, the young people, whether they win or lose tonight, they've done a great thing by elevating these issues for all of us to consider.
Some of the proponents of Measure G, such as Councilman Jay Chenier, say that the fact that we could be heading toward a tough financial time is more of a reason to set aside roughly $12 million for youth, because when recessions hit or tough times come, the kids programs are the first to get cut. What do you say to that argument?
So I think it's a good argument. My alternative measure would require that when the city has to cut its budget, that youth funding not be cut to any greater percentage than other general operations of the city. And so I agree with Councilman Chenier, my friend Jay Chenier's argument here. But again, as mayor, it's just my job to look at the big picture. And the big picture to me is the promises I made to the voters on Measure U, which is that we're going to have a robust, inclusive economic development agenda that's going to first invest in youth, but also have the resources to invest in affordable housing and our physical infrastructure on our commercial corridors and in our neighborhoods, in creating and attracting new businesses in Aggie Square, in the Sacramento Mobility Center. So I want to make sure that we have the capacity to do it all.
Okay.
And I've got to ask, just thinking, you mentioned affordable housing, and I know you're big on the issue of homelessness. So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask.
Can't help but be big on it because it's the people's priority.
Who's the homelessness czar?
In California?
In California.
I think that was answered. Gavin Newsom.
Gavin
himself.
Newsom. Okay.
But I have been honored to co-chair his task force, and I continue to be involved, and I continue to press my point, which is that until we change state law to require that governments at all levels bring people indoors, instead of making it the option that it is now, with all the fragmentation and lack of coordination among various jurisdictions, and frankly, lack of urgency by many jurisdictions, that this is not going to change. It's a combination of more money, yes, but combined with changing what has existed for forever, which is to make bringing people indoors an option to requiring. And by the way, if we do that in California, we would be the first in the nation to do so.
And I have one for you and one for Teresa I want to close on.
Yes.
And I think the big question is housing and homelessness are sort of these top of mind issues as California Democratic likely primary voters weigh their options, and that's according to polling from Public Policy Institute of California. What do you see as sort of the top issues that California voters are considering when weighing their Democratic options?
In the presidential race?
In the presidential race. And does my question even matter because the argument of electability is so strong and dominant?
I was just going to say, I think the issues of housing and homelessness are number one on the voters' mind, but I don't think that is what people are considering necessarily when they cast their vote for president. I think they are looking at this horrific turn that this country has taken with Donald Trump in the White House. And they're asking a couple questions. One, who can beat him? And two, who best will restore strength, civility, and bring some healing to this country? I think that's what the voters are asking themselves tonight.
And Teresa, as we get this national discussion that California's in, what do you think viewers at home should be closely watching for tonight as the results and polls close at 8 p.m.? What's the one thing that our viewers need to know?
Well, viewers, I think tonight will be closely watching the Measure G race, also the District 8 race in Meadowview and Parkway, and the Steve Hansen, Katie Valenzuela race in Midtown, Downtown, and Lamb Park. I think it's possible that all three of those could be quite close. And earlier I was talking a little bit about Pastor Simmons, and his main opponent is Mai Vang, who is on the Sac City Unified School Board. And she is the oldest of 16 children among immigrant, and she, if elected, she would be only the second woman on city council right now, the only millennial, and then Pastor Simmons, brings other experience as well. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one to watch tonight.
The voters in District 8 have a very positive choice to make, two great candidates. And again, you're right about the District 4 race. I'm, of course, backing my incumbent colleague Steve Hansen, who's done a great job. He's in a tough race. So we'll see what
you
happens.
nervous? for him?
I'm always nervous on election night because you never know, but I'm also confident. I think he's going to do well tonight.
And a reminder for our viewers at home, we have a show coming back up at 8:30 p.m. You can catch it on YouTube and sacbee.com. We'll have the live results once the polls close here in California at 8 p.m. You're watching Election Night in California. Mr. Mayor, Teresa, thanks for coming on our show.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
And we'll be right back.